Guns are pretty loud. See what I mean? What happens when you put a silencer on the end of it though? Is it like the movies and video games where you can put one on there and shoot something and no one hears? Kind of like this? I don't know. Not very realistic. So let's talk about some of the myths revolving around suppressors and get to the bottom of this whole thing. So, unsuppressed gun. You've all heard it. You've probably done it before yourself. Well, let's put a silencer on there and compare what it would sound like in real life to the movies. You've all seen in Hollywood how you can shoot a suppressor and no one hears it. That's what it actually sounds like. Not like this. Like this. And you've probably seen in movies before when the gun's not suppressed, there's big fireballs, big sounds, big noises. When they are suppressed, there's no flash, there's no noise, and you can almost shoot next to someone's head and they won't even hear it. Shoot the man in the tower, the guard doesn't hear. But, like you've seen just now, that's not very realistic. Also in video games, we'll get into that right now. In video games, they also lower velocity and can decrease range, but we'll talk about that right now. Okay, so video games. Let's talk about how video games sometimes, not all video games, but most competitive video games when you're playing player versus player, multiplayer, or online gaming, they have to have some sort of checks and balance there with the actual weapons, so it's not unfair. Or some guns in some configurations would be considered OP or overpowered in video game talk. I have an example right here. This is a beautiful AR-15, and if you're familiar with like Call of Duty or Battlefield or anything like that, there's a certain limited amount of attachments or accessories that you can put on your rifle, because if they just let you do whatever you wanted, guys would have, I mean, this has pretty much everything except a grenade launcher. It has the holographic, it's got a magnifier, he's got a riser, he's got a magwell, he's got different furniture, high-speed trigger, he's got a hand stop, light and laser, suppressor, free float barrel. All the things that would pretty much max out a build in a video game is on here. Now, in a video game, this gun would have to be nerfed a little bit. That's also some video game talk for you. Nerfing a firearm or nerfing a gun in a video game means that the damage or the performance of the firearm is decreased in order to balance it out so it's not too, again, OP. What I mean by that is if this gun had the same velocity and the same range as an unsuppressed gun in the video game, that would mean that I could fire from any distance and shoot anybody with the same damage, but the only difference is it'd be silent, so on their mini map, I wouldn't show up. So I'd be pretty much invisible, which would make me OP. So in video games, what they do is they lower the velocity or they decrease the range of the weapon, so you have to be closer to engage with a suppressed weapon, meaning that they're more likely to find you or if they survive your initial engagement. In real life, that's not the case. An AR-15, most guns, most suppressed guns, the velocity is not going to change. If anything, it might increase a little bit, just because there are gases that are continuing to propel the round, because generally or usually when there's not a suppressor on the weapon, the bullet is propelled up until this gas port here where part of it's bled off to recycle the action and load another round in the chamber, but also that propellant continues in the barrel, propelling the projectile, and then when it leaves the muzzle, that's when you start getting velocity loss. So when you see muzzle numbers or feet per second numbers on a box of ammunition, those are done at the muzzle. So that's actually, they get a velocity reading at the muzzle, because after the muzzle, you no longer have a propellant propelling the projectile, and the bullet's gonna start to decrease in velocity and start to drop. So a suppressor adds a little bit of length on the end of your barrel and could increase the velocity slightly, but most of the time it's not gonna change. Pretty much myth busted. Silencers do not decrease your velocity or your range. If anything, they will help out a little bit. Do you need ears? Ears is a slang term for hearing protection. Do you need to wear hearing protection while using a suppressor? Most people, I can't even hear myself talk right now. Most people will say no. That's the whole point of a suppressor, so you don't need ears. Well, I got a sound meter here, and we'll get to that in a minute. Let's talk about decibels and hearing protection. Now, OSHA, they consider 140 decibels to be considered immediate hearing damage. So that exposure, doesn't matter how long of the exposure is, just immediate. Once you hit that 140, you are getting hearing damage. Now, some people will tell you, oh, if it's below 140, you don't need ears. Well, hearing damage is accumulative. It actually gets worse over time. And so while it may not seem like it's hurting your ears, it actually is. If you are below 140 decibels, you can still get hearing damage just by the length of exposure. Even if you're under 140, you can still get hearing damage. Think of hearing protection or decibel numbers as kind of like sunscreen. So SPF 50 will do a pretty good job at protecting you from the UV rays. SPF 30 will also do a good job as long as you're not out for a long time. But let's say, for instance, one person's wearing SPF 30, one person's wearing SPF 50. They're both out in the sun for 4 hours. The person wearing SPF 30 is going to get more skin damage, more sun exposure, more UV radiation to their body because it's just longer exposure with a less barrier of protection. Same thing with ears. If you go buy hearing protection at the store, you'll see on the box it'll say something called NRR and then have a number like 28 or 32 or 19. NRR is the noise reduction rating, so that's how many decibels it'll cut down from the ambient environment around you. So let's say you give a round number of 30. Let's say your hearing protection gives you 30 decibels of protection, and the firearm you're shooting is 165 decibels. Well, that would mean that we're bringing it down to, if my math is correct, 135 decibels. So while that is still 5 decibels under 140, which OSHA considers to be like immediate damage with any length of exposure, you're still gonna get hearing damage over a period of time. Now, I don't know exactly what that period of time is, and everyone's ears are different, but 135 decibels is pretty close to 140, and let's say an hour-long exposure of 135 decibels, it probably give you actually more hearing damage than that one-time exposure of 140. So a suppressor, depending on the make and the model, will also reduce the decibels as well. So let's say, good round number, let's say the suppressor lowers the report by 30 decibels again. So now you have ears that give you 30 decibels of reduction, and a suppressor that gives you another 30s for a total of 60 decibels in reduction. So now that 165 decibel firearm is now 105 decibels at your ear, which is much, much more forgiving on the human body and the human ears for prolonged exposure. So while some people tell you that you don't need ears while shooting a firearm, I'll give you an example of why you might want to wear them with an AR-15. The bolt, this weapon is clear, there's no ammunition. That noise alone, my ears are ringing. I'm gonna lock it back to the rear. Let's get my trusty sound meter out here, because at the bolt, that was 141.9 decibels. Let's do that again. 142.5. So I am literally damaging my ears right now as we speak. 139.5. Now, am I gonna go deaf from over 140 decibel exposure? No, it's just hearing damage. Like I said, everyone's ears are different, but over time, that prolonged exposure is going to get worse as it goes, and then you're gonna have some real problems in the future. So I already know I have tinnitus from my time in the military and just from my time as a hobbyist shooter and then in the industry of working in firearms. So I wear earplugs and earmuffs when I shoot with a suppressor. That's just me, especially when I'm indoors. If I'm outdoors and I'm shooting something like a 22, most of the time I'll just throw muffs on, or I won't throw anything on at all, because the 22 suppress is pretty quiet outdoors, not enough to really damage your ears that bad, especially a manual, like a bolt action or lever gun. But in short, most semi-automatic firearms that are shooting supersonic ammunition, you absolutely are going to want to use hearing protection with your suppressor. So at the end of the day, that's gonna be up to you. You can do whatever you want. I'm not your dad. And so you can not wear ears, you can raw dog it. I'd done it for a long time. When I was a kid, I used to shoot rabbits with my buddy Will and Mike. We had no ears on, 12 gauge all day long, and that probably contributed quite a bit to my tinnitus, actually. So my advice to you, as someone who's been shooting for 25 years, wear ears, protect your ears. You only have 2 sets. They do have hearing aids out there, but I would say if you can prevent hearing damage, prevent it. So I would say myth busted, you need to wear ears with a suppressor. Let's talk about another myth that I've heard quite a bit. And I actually used to think this was true. It wasn't until I actually got into the military, and especially when I started having to clean my own suppressors and working in this industry, that suppressors do not self-clean. The myth is that you don't need to clean a suppressor, or silencers self-clean, or they're, just put them on, leave them on the gun, they're fine. It's kind of the farthest thing from the truth, actually. Certain calibers can be dirtier than others. So, like for instance, 5.56, you can go a lot longer without cleaning it because it is high pressure, it is hot. So the things that people talk about, how like, oh, it just blows it out at the end of the can, it gets hot enough and it just like falls off and blows out. Well, that is true, but that can also cause baffle strikes and end cap strikes, and those carbon pieces blowing off with the pressures that are produced by 5.56 can often damage baffles. So while you can go a long time without cleaning the high pressure suppressor, you do need to clean them. I have right here an example of a suppressor that was one of our demo cans that lived primarily on a short 10.5 inch machine gun in 5.56. Had some time on a belt fed, but it was all full auto. This thing is completely caked with carbon and lead to the point where it's just a relic now in our in our museum, if you will, because it's pretty unserviceable at this point. There's erosion on the baffle. It still sounds great. It's just, it weighs almost 2 or 3 times as much as it did when it first started because there's so much lead and carbon in there. And you would think, this being probably seen at least 10,000 rounds under full auto, you'd think, oh, high pressure, really hot, shouldn't self-clean. If suppressors self-clean, this would be a perfect example of a suppressor that would self-clean, and it's dirty. I have some baffles from another demo can that was also used on a 5.56 machine gun. They are caked up with copper fouling and lead. I mean, probably not good for me to do health-wise, but all that right there, that should be blown out if suppressors self-clean. Well, they don't self-clean. These things to me are investments, and they are something that we work hard to pay for, and I don't know about you, but I take care of my equipment. So just like I clean my gun, I might not clean my AR-15 as much as I did in the Marine Corps, but I still do when I see it slowing down, when I see it kind of slugging up a little bit, I will go through and clean it. I don't clean it after every time I shoot, that's ridiculous, at least in my opinion. But just like I would clean my firearm every now and then, give a scheduled maintenance, you want to do the same thing with your suppressor, clean it. There's great companies out there that make solutions that you can dunk your suppressor into and let it sit overnight or for a couple days, and then you can wash it out and it's almost as good as new. Again, I'm not your dad, you can do whatever you want. But yes, you need to clean your suppressors. Suppressors are not self-cleaning. Self-tightening is another one that I've heard, where suppressors self-tighten. Now, I'm not going to discredit anyone's research or R&D they've done on their own suppressors. We can just tell you from our experience that suppressors, if they're not tight or properly mounted, they will walk off. I've seen multiple companies' suppressors shoot down range. It just happens, it's the nature of the game. Sometimes guns get really hot, sometimes things malfunction. A suppressor that's well mounted to your mount, properly torqued, will not walk off, and there will be no need for self-tightening. Now, there's a lot of talk about left-hand threads and all that stuff. I'm not gonna get into that. You can do your own research on that. But generally, for the most part, suppressors are not self-tightening because vibration does cause things to loosen. That's just kind of science. Things will loosen over time. Like with a pistol suppressor, it's very common knowledge, and it's just part of training when you get trained on one of these things, is to make sure the suppressor is tight after every few rounds. Because on pistols, because of direct thread, that constant movement, after a while, the can get loose. Unless you really monkey it on there, and I mean, then you can have a hard time taking it off. But just normal hand tight, because most suppressors are installed by a hand. So you just take them on, tighten them, and then go to work. It's important to check them every once in a while because they will loosen up. There's different things you can use, different washers, different locking collars. That's, again, personal preference, but in general, a suppressor that is threaded onto a barrel is not self-tightening. So another myth, I would say, kind of busted. It's just gonna depend on your barrel and your setup, but for the most part, suppressors are not self-tightening. The next myth up is one that I actually used to believe as well because I grew up in California. The gun laws there, though, you can't own a suppressor. That's actually the only state west of the Mississippi River that you cannot own a suppressor. For the most part, and you can check your local state regulations, for the most part, suppressors are legal in America. And across the world, actually, there's many countries that allow private citizens to own suppressors, not only because they're just more polite because of noise pollution, but they are also more pleasant to shoot and to hunt with. Suppressors are legal and they're federally legal, so it's just going to depend on your state whether they allow it or not. And we're in Idaho, it's legal here. Check your state regulations again, and that will let you know if it's legal. A lot of people think that you can't hunt with a suppressor in America, when in fact you can in most states. Again, check your state regulations. Some people talk about you need like a class 3 license to buy a suppressor. That's another myth I've heard. You can't legally acquire a suppressor unless you have a class 3 license. Well, what's a class 3 license? A class 3 license is generally a license that allows you to sell NFA items. That's more on the FFL side of things though, for a different conversation. But you as an individual do not need a class 3 license. All you need is to go to a suppressor dealer and fill out a 4473 and fill out your Form 4. And once it gets approved by the ATF, you can legally take it home and use it however it is allowed in your state. If you can hunt with it, hunt with it. If you can shoot with it on the range, some ranges are weird. Some ranges don't allow 50 or full auto or suppressors. That's their problem. Go find another range. But yes, they are legal. If you want to transport them across state lines, NFA items are legal to transport across state lines as long as the state that you are transporting it to and from, both of those states are they don't prohibit NFA items. So let's say, for instance, if I was going to Utah, Utah allows suppressors, so I would legally allowed to be able to cross state lines. For some NFA items like machine guns, and you have to fill out a form 53.20.20 and submit paperwork to the ATF, wait for approval. Suppressors and AOWs are exempt from that. So as long as the state you're traveling to allows suppressors, you can legally take a suppressor into that state. If you are in a state that allows suppressors and you have a clean background and you are of age, you can go out and buy a suppressor and legally use it for anything that your state allows. So hopefully that myth is correct. Okay guys, so we talked a lot about myths today. Kind of things you've heard in the past, maybe you didn't know, maybe you were too embarrassed to ask somebody, but hopefully that covered a lot of the myths that are floating out there. Suppressors are a lot of fun, and they make shooting much more enjoyable, not only for you, but the people around you. And so why should you get a suppressor? Like we talked about, hearing protection, signature reduction, just being polite. And why should you get a JK suppressor? There's a lot of good companies out there. JK Armament suppressors are really unique in the fact that not only one, we have an unconditional unlimited lifetime warranty, but that currently all of our suppressors are modular or mission configurable, meaning that they actually take apart baffle by baffle. So I have a custom suppressor here that's way longer than it needs to be, but if you want to build something like this, you can. You can take it apart and clean it. You can tune it to your host weapon and pretty much makes it to where you can use it on much or a plethora more of hosts than you would with a dedicated suppressor. Now, dedicated suppressors are great. Like I said, a lot of great companies make a lot of great suppressors. Why we like ours is because of the aforementioned features. You get to take it apart and clean it and tune it to your gun. And it comes with a lifetime warranty, and we have a custom shop where you can pretty much build whatever you want, so you can have it your way. And that's why you should choose a JK Armament suppressor for your next suppressor. I hope you guys enjoyed this series we did. If you want to find out more about suppressor myths or any kind of, you know, legalities or just general information, do your research. Go on Google, look up some information on suppressors. It's actually pretty mainstream now. There's a lot of YouTube videos out there that talk about suppressors. We're just one of them. Please hit that like and subscribe button and comment below what you want to hear from us about next or what our next video should be. So again, I'm Nick. Thank you guys again, and I'll see you on the range.